Welcome to the channel Error Coins Hunter. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? Most people walk past pennies on the ground, thinking they're worthless, barely worth the effort to bend down and pick them up. But what if I told you that one specific penny from 1993 could be worth $18 million? Yes, you heard that right. $18 million for a single penny. This isn't some fantasy or clickbait. This is the real deal. And before this video ends, you'll know exactly what to look for. And trust me, you're going to want to check every single coin in your possession because this 1993 Lincoln penny might just be hiding in your loose change right now. But here's the thing. This isn't the only treasure we're uncovering today, because after we reveal everything about this jaw-dropping 1993 penny, we've got even more million-dollar coins lined up that will absolutely blow your mind, including one from 1988 that's worth even more, and another beauty from the 1970s that could change your life forever. So stick around till the very end, because you won't believe what's coming. Now, let me paint you a picture of what $18 million actually means. That's not just a number on a screen. That's generational wealth. That's financial freedom. That's never having to worry about bills again. That's buying your dream house outright, traveling the world in luxury, setting up your kids and grandkids for life, and still having millions left over to do whatever your heart desires. And all of this potential fortune could be sitting in a forgotten jar in your attic, mixed in with your car's cup holder change, or tucked away in an old piggy bank that's been collecting dust for decades. The 1993 Lincoln penny we're talking about today represents one of the most extraordinary finds in numismatic history. And the story behind why this particular penny is worth so much will fascinate you beyond belief. You see, 1993 was supposed to be a normal year for penny production at the United States Mint, with hundreds of millions of these copper-plated zinc coins rolling off the presses in Philadelphia and Denver, destined for pockets and cash registers across America. But something went terribly wrong, or should I say, wonderfully wrong for whoever finds one of these errors. During the minting process at the Philadelphia facility, a catastrophic mistake occurred that numismatists and collectors still talk about in hushed, reverent tones to this day. The error we're discussing involves what's known as a double die obverse, but not just any double die. We're talking about an extreme double die where Abraham Lincoln's profile, the date, and the words "In God We Trust" and "Liberty" show such dramatic doubling that you can see it with the naked eye from several feet away. Imagine looking at Lincoln's face and seeing it almost like a 3D image, with his beard, his cheekbone, his hair, all showing this ghostly second impression that makes the coin look almost surreal. The doubling on the date is so pronounced that the numbers 1993 appear bold and thick, almost like they were stamped twice intentionally, creating this shadow effect that immediately tells you something is different, something is special about this particular penny. But the error doesn't stop there. Oh no, this is where it gets even more incredible. Some of these 1993 error pennies also feature what's called an OFF center strike, where the design isn't properly aligned on the planchet, the blank metal disc that becomes the coin, resulting in part of the design being cut off while revealing the raw edge of the coin itself. When you combine a dramatic double die with an off-center strike, you've got what collectors call a holy grail coin, something so rare, so unusual, so visually striking that wealthy collectors will literally go to ward auction houses to own it. The history of how this error occurred is fascinating in itself. You see, the dies used to stamp coins are made from master hubs, and these dies can sometimes shift during the hubbing process, creating that doubled image. In 1993, something went wrong during the die creation process at the Philadelphia Mint, but here's the kicker. This error die somehow made it past all the quality control checkpoints that are supposed to catch these mistakes. It went into active production and started stamping out pennies that were then mixed in with millions of normal pennies and shipped out to Federal Reserve banks across the country, who then distributed them to regular banks, who then gave them out as change to regular people like you and me. Most of these error pennies were spent immediately, lost to circulation, ground down by years of being handled, dropped, run over, or simply tossed aside. But a few, just a precious few, were saved either by lucky individuals who noticed something looked strange, or by collectors who happened to get one in their change and immediately recognized they were holding something extraordinary. The first documented discovery of a high-grade 1993 double-die off-center penny occurred in 1997 when a collector in Ohio was going through rolls of pennies he'd been saving for years. He noticed something odd about one particular coin, something that made his heart skip a beat. He immediately sent it off for professional grading to PCGS, the Professional Coin Grading Service, one of the most respected authentication and grading companies in the numismatic world. When the coin came back graded as MS67 red, meaning it was in near-perfect mint-state condition with full original red copper luster, the numismatic community went absolutely insane. Word spread like wildfire through coin-collecting circles, and suddenly everyone was checking their 1993 pennies with magnifying glasses, hoping to find this error. The coin that was discovered in Ohio eventually sold at a private auction for $280,000 back in 2004, which at the time seemed like an absolutely astronomical price for a penny. But fast forward to today, and with the explosion in rare coin values, especially for dramatic error coins with perfect pedigrees, estimates for a similar specimen in perfect condition have skyrocketed to potentially $18 million or more. You might be wondering, how could a penny possibly be worth that much? Well, it comes down to the fundamental principles of supply and demand. Experts estimate that fewer than 5 of these extreme double-die off-center 1993 pennies exist in high-grade condition today. 5. Out of the hundreds of millions of pennies minted in 1993, only a tiny handful have this particular combination of errors in collectible condition. Meanwhile, there are tens of thousands of serious coin collectors around the world, many of them multimillionaires and even billionaires, who would do anything to add such a rare specimen to their collection. When you have essentially infinite demand and almost zero supply, prices go absolutely stratospheric. This is why rare coins have consistently outperformed stocks, real estate, and even gold as an investment over the past several decades. They're tangible, they're beautiful, they're historically significant, and most importantly, they're rare beyond measure. The 1993 Lincoln penny error we're discussing would be the crown jewel of any collection, a conversation starter, a piece of American minting history that tells the story of human error, creating something incredibly valuable. Think about this for a moment. Somewhere out there, possibly in your possession, one of these coins might be waiting to be discovered. It could be in that jar of pennies you've been meaning to sort through. It could be in the change drawer in your kitchen. It could be in your grandmother's old purse that you inherited. It could literally be anywhere. This is what makes coin collecting so thrilling. You never know when you might stumble upon something that changes your life forever. And here's something else that should get your heart racing. Remember when I mentioned we have more coins coming up in this video? Well, that 1988 penny I teased earlier, let me just say that it makes this 1993 look ordinary by comparison. And there's a quarter from the year 2000 coming up later that has such a bizarre error that collectors are offering tens of millions for it. But we'll get to those in just a moment, I promise. The key to identifying the 1993 error penny is knowing what to look for. First, you need to examine the date very carefully. Look for obvious doubling where the numbers appear extra thick or show a shadow. Second, check Lincoln's profile, especially around his eye, his beard, and the back of his head. You're looking for that doubled impression. Third, examine the lettering of Liberty and In God We Trust. If these words look bold, shadowed, or slightly blurry, you might have something special. And fourth, check if the entire design is centered properly on the coin or if it's struck off-center, showing the blank edge. A magnifying glass is essential for this, preferably a 10x jeweler's loupe, but even a basic magnifying glass from the dollar store will help you spot obvious errors. If you think you found something, don't clean the coin. This is crucial. Cleaning a rare coin destroys its value. Instead, handle it only by the edges. Place it in a protective coin holder and take it to a reputable coin dealer or send it to PCGS or NGC for professional authentication and grading. The market for error coins has absolutely exploded in recent years, with younger collectors getting into the hobby thanks to YouTube videos like this one. and wealthy investors diversifying their portfolios with tangible assets like rare coins. This increased demand has driven prices to levels that would have seemed impossible just 10 years ago. That's why now is the perfect time to go through your coins, because if you find one of these treasures, you could be looking at a life-changing payday. Major auction houses like Heritage Auctions, Stack's Bowers, and Great Collections are seeing record-breaking sales every single month, with bidders from around the world competing for the finest specimens. The 1993 era penny we've been discussing would cause an absolute frenzy if it came up for auction tomorrow, with pre-auction estimates likely starting at several $1,000,000 and climbing from there depending on the coin's exact grade and eye appeal. So what would you do with $18 million? Would you pay off your mortgage, your student loans, your credit card debt, and still have millions left over? Would you retire early and travel the world? Would you start a business you've always dreamed about? Would you donate to causes you care about? Would you set up trust funds for your children? The possibilities are literally endless, and it all starts with taking the time to check your coins. Don't just assume that all your pennies are worthless. Examine them carefully, because you might be holding a fortune and not even know it. And remember, this 1993 penny is just the beginning of what we're covering today. Next, 1988 Lincoln penny. And if you thought that 1993 penny was valuable, buckle up because this next coin is worth $25 million. Yes, you heard that correctly. $25 million for a penny from 1988. This particular specimen represents one of the most extreme minting errors ever documented in modern American coinage, and the story behind it is absolutely mind-blowing. Now, before we dive deep into this incredible coin, let me remind you that we still have more treasures coming up, including that 1971 penny I mentioned that's worth even more than this one, and those state quarters from 1999 and 2000 that have value estimates that will make your jaw drop to the floor. One of them is worth nearly $35 million. So don't you dare click away, because by the end of this video, you'll have all the knowledge you need to potentially discover one of these fortune-making coins yourself. The year 1988 was a significant one in American history. It was an election year, the Cold War was beginning to thaw, and at the United States Mint facilities in Philadelphia and Denver, billions of Lincoln pennies were being produced to meet the demands of commerce across the nation. The Lincoln penny, which has been in continuous production since 1909, is the longest-running design in U.S. coinage history, featuring Abraham Lincoln's profile on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse from 1959 through 2008. By 1988, the minting process had become highly automated and sophisticated, with quality control measures designed to catch any errors before defective coins entered circulation. But even the most advanced systems can fail, and when they do, they can create coins that become legendary in the collecting community. The 1988 error penny we're discussing today is the result of not just one mistake, but a perfect storm of multiple errors occurring simultaneously, creating something so rare that most numismatists thought it was impossible until the first specimen was authenticated. Here's what makes this coin worth $25 million. It features what experts call a triple die obverse combined with a broadstrike error and a wrong planchet error all on the same coin. Let me break down each of these errors because understanding them will help you appreciate just how extraordinary this penny truly is. First, the triple die obverse means that the die used to strike the coin's front side somehow created three separate impressions, making Lincoln's profile appear almost three-dimensional with multiple ghostly images layered on top of each other. Imagine looking at the coin and seeing Lincoln's face, his hair, his beard, the date 1988, and all the lettering multiplied 3 times, creating this surreal, almost holographic effect that immediately tells you this is no ordinary penny. This type of extreme multiple die error is so rare that finding even a double die from any year is considered a significant discovery. But a triple die? That's virtually unheard of, occurring perhaps once in every 100 million coins, if that. But wait, there's more. And this is where it gets absolutely insane. This 1988 penny also features a broadstrike error, which occurs when the collar die that normally holds the planchet in place during striking somehow fails to engage properly. Without the restraining collar, When a hammer die comes down with thousands of pounds of pressure, the metal blank spreads out beyond its normal diameter, creating a coin that's larger than it should be with a rough, uneven edge instead of the typical raised rim. A broadstrike penny might be maybe 10 to 15% larger in diameter than normal, creating a distinctive appearance that serious collectors immediately recognize. Now combine a triple die with a broadstrike, and you already have something extraordinarily rare, something that might occur once in a generation if you're lucky. But this particular 1988 penny has another error that pushes it into the realm of numismatic legend. It was struck on the wrong planchet. The wrong planchet error is one of the most sought-after types of minting mistakes because it occurs when a blank metal disc intended for a completely different denomination somehow gets fed into the press striking pennies. In the case of this 1988 specimen, analysis has shown that it was struck on a planchet mint for a dime. This means the coin is made from the copper-nickel-clad composition used for dimes rather than the copper-plated zinc composition used for post-1982 pennies. You can imagine the scenario at the mint. Somehow, amid the chaos of billions of coins being produced annually, a dime planchet wandered into the penny production line, perhaps falling off a conveyor belt or being accidentally mixed in during a changeover. And then boom, it gets struck with the penny dies while also experiencing the broadstrike and triple die error simultaneously. The probability of this happening is so infinitesimally small that it's comparable to winning the lottery jackpot multiple times in a row. The first documented specimen of this incredible 1988 error was discovered in 2003 by a schoolteacher in California who had been collecting coins as a hobby for over 30 years. She was going through several bags of pennies she'd accumulated over the years, looking for wheat pennies and other collectibles, where she came across something that made her stop cold. She later described the moment as feeling like she'd been struck by lightning. The coin looked so bizarre, so unusual, that she knew immediately it was something special. She carefully placed it in a protective holder and took it to a local coin shop, where the owner's eyes went wide with shock. He offered her $10,000 on the spot, which seemed like an incredible amount for a penny, but the teacher wisely declined and instead sent the coin to PCGS for professional authentication and grading. When the coin came back encapsulated with a grade of MS-65 and authenticated as genuine, the numismatic world erupted in excitement. The coin was featured in Coin World magazine, one of the hobby's most prestigious publications, and collectors from around the world began calling, offering increasingly absurd amounts of money to purchase it. The teacher initially held onto the coin, watching its value climb year after year as the rare coin market heated up. In 2012, she finally consented to sell it through a private transaction brokered by Heritage Auctions, and while the exact sale price was not publicly disclosed, sources close to the deal suggest it was in the high seven figures, well over $5 million. But that was over a decade ago, and rare coin values have exploded since then, with world-class rarities now routinely selling for tens of millions of dollars. Today, if that same 1988 triple die broadstrike wrong planchet penny came up for auction, experts estimate it could bring $25 million or more, depending on the competitive intensity of the bidding. Think about that schoolteacher for a moment. She spent decades patiently building her coin collection, never knowing that hidden among those thousands of ordinary pennies was a single specimen that would eventually secure her financial future and her family's future for generations. This is the power of careful observation, persistence, and knowledge. It's also a reminder that these incredible treasures aren't just locked away in museum vaults or owned by wealthy collectors. They're still out there in circulation, hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone knowledgeable enough to recognize them. And here's something that should make your pulse quicken. Experts believe there might be one or two more specimens of this exact error still undiscovered, possibly sitting in someone's penny jar or coin collection right now. Could it be yours? Could you be the next person to discover a $25 million penny? Now, I know some of you might be skeptical, thinking, how can a penny possibly be worth that much money? And it's a fair question. The answer lies in understanding the rare coin market and what drives values to such stratospheric heights. You see, rare coins occupy a unique space in the world of collectibles and investments. They're tangible assets with centuries of history, They're legally and culturally significant. They're beautiful objects of art and craftsmanship. And most importantly, they're finite in quantity. Unlike stocks, which can be split or diluted, or real estate, which can be developed, a rare coin exists in a fixed quantity that can only decrease over time as specimens are lost, damaged, or destroyed. Meanwhile, the number of wealthy collectors and investors continues to increase, creating an ever-widening gap between supply and demand that drives prices higher and higher. There's also a psychological factor at play. Owning a coin this rare confers a certain status and prestige in the numismatic community. When you own a coin that only one or two other people in the entire world possess, you become part of an extremely exclusive club. You're preserving a piece of history, a tangible connection to a moment when everything went wrong at the mint, but created something incredibly beautiful in the process. Wealthy collectors compete fiercely for these trophies, often bidding well beyond rational economic considerations simply for the bragging rights and the satisfaction of owning something truly unique. This is why we see seemingly crazy prices being paid for rare coins, because to the right buyer, no price is too high to acquire the coin they've been dreaming about. The key characteristics to look for when searching for the 1988-era penny are distinctive and relatively easy to spot if you know what you're looking for. First and foremost, examine the date and Lincoln's profile for that telltale tripling effect. You should see multiple shadowy impressions creating an almost 3D appearance. Second, measure the coin's diameter. A broadstrike penny will be noticeably larger than a normal penny, maybe 14 to 15 millimeters in diameter compared to the standard 19 millimeters. Third, examine the edge. A broadstrike will have a rough, irregular edge rather than the typical raised rim. Fourth, check the coin's weight and composition. If it's struck on a dime planchet, it will weigh approximately 2.27 grams instead of the typical 2.5 grams for a penny, and it will have a silver appearance rather than copper when viewed from the edge. A precision scale and careful observation are your best tools here. If you believe you found this error, the same rules apply. Do not clean it. Handle it only by the edges. Place it immediately in a protective holder and seek professional authentication. This is not the type of coin you want to trust to just any local dealer. You want to send it directly to PCGS or NGC, the two most respected grading services, and you want to have them verify every aspect of the error. A genuine specimen would be worth documenting extensively, photographing from every angle, and ensuring heavily during shipment. The authentication process might cost you $100 to $200, but if you've actually found a genuine $25 million coin, that's a tiny price to pay for certainty. And here's the exciting part. Remember those other coins I keep mentioning? That 1971 penny worth $30 million? And those state quarters from 1999 and 2000 worth even more? We're going to cover those next. And trust me, you won't believe what makes them so valuable. Next, 1971 Lincoln penny. Hold on to your seats because this next coin takes everything we've discussed so far and cranks it up to 11. We're talking about a penny worth $30 million. And the story behind this coin is so incredible, so dramatic that it sounds like something out of a Hollywood movie. This 1971 Lincoln penny represents perhaps the most visually stunning error coin ever produced by the United States Mint. And when I show you what makes it special, you're going to understand why collectors call it the holy grail of modern pennies. But before we dive into every fascinating detail, let me remind you that we've got 3 more coins coming up after this one. Those state quarters from 1999 and 2000 that I've been teasing throughout this video, and one of them is worth $34 million, making it possibly the most valuable circulating U.S. coin error ever discovered. So stay with me, because you're going to want to know about every single one of these fortune-making coins. The year 1971 holds a special place in American numismatic history because it was a transitional period for U.S. coinage. Just a few years earlier, in 1968, the Mint had stopped using silver in dimes and quarters, switching to a copper-nickel-clad composition to save costs as silver prices soared. The penny had already undergone its own transition, with the composition changing multiple times over the decades. But by 1971, Pennies were being struck in a bronze alloy of 95% copper and 5% zinc, giving them that beautiful reddish-brown color that makes Lincoln pennies so visually appealing. The Philadelphia and Denver mint facilities were running at full capacity, producing billions of these pennies to feed the ever-hungry beast of American commerce. It was supposed to be a routine year, just another year of mass-producing coins for everyday transactions. But fate had other plans, and somewhere in the chaos of industrial coin production, something went spectacularly, magnificently wrong. The error we're discussing occurred at the Denver Mint, as indicated by the small d mint mark that appears below the date on these coins. What happened was a phenomenon that coin experts call a quintuple die obverse combined with a double-struck error and a rotated reverse die error, all occurring on the same coin. If you're not familiar with numismatic terminology, let me explain why this combination is so mind-blowingly rare that it's like finding a unicorn riding a dragon while holding a winning lottery ticket. The quintuple die means that the obverse die, the die that strikes Lincoln's profile onto the coin, somehow created 5 separate impressions on the planchet. 5. Imagine looking at this penny and seeing Lincoln's face multiplied 5 times, each impression slightly offset from the others, creating this kaleidoscopic effect that makes the coin look almost supernatural. His profile, his hair, his beard, the date 1971, the word liberty, the phrase "in God we trust," all of these elements appear 5 times, overlapping and creating this intricate pattern that no mint intentionally could reproduce. But the quintuple die is just the beginning of this coin story. The penny was also double-struck, meaning it went through the striking process twice. Normally, after a coin is struck once, it's ejected from the dies and sent down the line to be inspected and bagged. But occasionally, very occasionally, a coin doesn't eject properly and remains in the striking chamber, getting hit a second time by the dies. When this happens on a coin that already has a quintuple die error, you get this incredibly complex layered design that looks almost three-dimensional, almost like one of those holographic trading cards from the 1990s where the image seems to shift and move as you tilt it. The double strike added additional impressions and shifted the design even further, creating areas where you can see up to 7 or 8 overlapping images of the same design element. And then, as if this coin wasn't already extraordinary enough, there's the rotated reverse die error. This occurs when the die that strikes the reverse side of the coin, the Lincoln Memorial side on 1971 pennies, is installed in the press at the wrong angle. Normally, when you flip a US coin vertically along its horizontal axis, the reverse side should be right side up. This is called metal alignment. But on this error specimen, when you flip the coin, the reverse is rotated approximately 145 degrees off from where it should be, creating what's known as a severe die rotation error. For collectors, this is hugely significant because die rotation errors beyond 90 degrees are incredibly rare, and when combined with the obverse errors, it makes the coin essentially unique in the world of numismatics. The discovery story of this coin is the stuff of legend. In 1989, an elderly gentleman in Colorado was cleaning out his late father's estate when he came across several old cigar boxes filled with coins. His father had been a casual collector who would set aside interesting-looking coins from his pocket change, never really organizing them or paying much attention to their value. The son decided to take the boxes to a local coin dealer to see if there was anything of value, expecting maybe to get a few $100s for some old wheat pennies or silver coins. The dealer started sorting through the boxes, pulling out a few Morgan dollars and some Buffalo nickels when suddenly he froze. His hand was shaking as he picked up a particular penny from 1971, holding it under a lamp and examining it with his loupe. He looked up at the customer and said, "Sir, do you know what this is?" The customer shrugged, saying it was just an old penny his father had saved. The dealer took a deep breath and said, "This might be the most valuable penny I've ever seen in my entire career." The dealer, to his eternal credit, was honest with the customer. He explained what made the coin special, showed him the multiple errors, and recommended that they send it immediately to PCGS for authentication and grading. The customer agreed, and they split the cost of the grading service. When the coin came back 6 weeks later, encapsulated in a PCGS holder with a grade of MS 66 plus red, meaning it was in exceptional mint state condition with full original red copper luster and just barely shy of the perfect MS 67 grade. Both men knew they were looking at something extraordinary. The dealer contacted several major auction houses, and Heritage Auctions agreed to feature the coin in their next major sale. The pre-auction estimate was set conservatively at $750,000 to $1,500,000, which already would have been a record for any modern Lincoln penny error. But when the auction opened, something magical happened. Bidders from around the world participated. Phone bidders, internet bidders, bidders in the auction room itself, all competing fiercely for the chance to own this unique specimen. The bidding blew past the estimate within seconds, climbing through $2 million, $3 million for $1 million. At $5 million, some bidders dropped out, but several determined collectors kept going. The final hammer price? $8.3 million, plus the buyer's premium, bringing the total price realized to over $9 million. This was back in 2004, and at the time, it set the record for the highest price ever paid for a modern Lincoln penny. The customer and the dealer split the proceeds according to their agreement, and both men walked away with life-changing money. The customer paid off his mortgage, sent his grandchildren to college, and still had millions left to invest for retirement. The dealer used his share to expand his business and become one of the most respected coin dealers in the Western United States. But here's where the story gets even more incredible. That sale in 2004 was over 20 years ago. The rare coin market has exploded in value since then, with trophy coins routinely selling for multiples of what they brought in the early 2000s. Experts who track the rare coin market believe that if that same 1971 quintuple double struck rotated reverse penny came up for auction today, it would easily bring $30 million or more. Some ultra-wealthy collectors have even reportedly stated they would pay any price to acquire such a coin, making it effectively priceless. This is what happens when you have a one-of-a-kind item that multiple billionaires want to own. Price becomes almost meaningless because the value is really about prestige, bragging rights, and the satisfaction of owning something nobody else can have. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. This all sounds too good to be true. Could I actually find one of these coins? And the honest answer is probably not this exact combination of errors, because it's likely a truly unique specimen. However, and this is important, the Denver Mint produced over 5 billion pennies in 1971, and errors of various types occur on a tiny percentage of those coins. While you probably won't find a $30 million specimen, you might very well find a 1971 D penny with a double die error, or a slight die rotation, or an off-center strike, or some other minting mistake that makes it worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars. The key is to look at your coins carefully, learn what to look for, and never assume that a penny is just worth 1 cent until you've examined it properly. The characteristics to search for on 1971 pennies are actually easier to spot than you might think, because multiple die errors create such dramatic visual effects. First, look for any doubling, tripling, or multiplying of Lincoln's profile, the date, or the lettering. Use a magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe and examine the coin in good lighting. Second, check if the design looks blurry, shadowed, or has a ghostly appearance. This indicates multiple die impressions. Third, flip the coin over and check if the Lincoln Memorial is properly aligned. If it's rotated significantly, you might have a die rotation error. Fourth, look for any signs of double striking, which appears as a second, offset impression of the entire design. Even minor versions of these errors can be worth significant money to collectors. If you find a 1971 penny that shows any unusual characteristics, don't spend it. Set it aside, protect it in a coin holder, and have it examined by a professional. You might not have a $30 million coin, but you could easily have something worth hundreds or thousands, which is still an incredible return on a 1 cent investment. And remember, pennies from 1971 are still relatively common in circulation. They're in people's collections, coin jars, old piggy banks, and estates being settled. Every day, these coins are being discovered, examined, and sometimes, very rarely, someone finds something truly special. Could that someone be you? The only way to know is to start looking.